What I want to briefly talk about today is the idea on how a culture or society or our surroundings affect who we are as people and how we act, and also how we handle our marriages or our love. In class, our teacher was telling us about this girl in our grade who has this petrifying fear of snakes, and that he saw her handle a snake and could just see this gut fear and true fear coming out of her. One of the things that I've recently really figured out about myself is that I'm not as afraid of a lot of things that I thought I was. I always thought I was afraid of, just everything like spiders, heights, all this stuff. And for example, heights in particular, I always thought was like one of my biggest fears, my biggest, like, I'm not gonna do that. But I recently went on a trip and I, was forced to be, on the edge of a cliff or climbing something not very safe, and I realized that I wasn't actually afraid of it. And it was more of an idea, or of this idea that I thought I was supposed to be afraid of all of these things. Because like I'd heard about all these people who were afraid of it, and I was just like, oh, I probably should be afraid of that too. And I always felt it was weird that I wasn't, and so I formulated in my mind this idea that I was afraid of all this stuff. I'm starting to understand that I'm not actually afraid of a lot of things that I thought I was, which is great. Um, I think as people, one of the biggest accomplishments we can have is um, identifying how we truly react to a situation or to something, and block out all of the previous ideas of this is how I'm supposed to feel, or this is how I've always felt, so it's how it has to be, and really realize who we are and how we handle stuff. And then once we identify how we really act, not even if we hate it, not being afraid of that or not just pushing it away because we're ashamed of how we react to a certain situation, but like actively trying to change it, is the best option. So Fromm has these different ideas of having and being modes. Having mode is more possessive, and the one that is we identify the most with, like it's the most common, simply because we have a culture based on survival and possession being what you have to do to survive. Fromm writes that being signifies nothing other than the self-realization which keeps in tune with the transformation. This leads to experience in terms of the individual and to organization and patterning in terms of the universe. Thus, the organism and world actualize themselves simultaneously. So we have this box around who we think we are supposed to be, and the box is formed by society and outside influences and all these things, and it's just what we think we're supposed to be doing. And the idea of experiencing more with the being mode is the idea of breaking out of the box a little bit and starting to experience what you truly are experiencing instead of just these views and these ideas. So society is more about shaping the having mode of love than the being mode. Just in particular, to focus on the idea of marriage. In the beginning stages of a relationship, love is more the being mode. Fromm talks about you're trying to keep the other person interested, and oftentimes once married, the relationship becomes more possessive. Fromm writes that nobody has to be won over anymore because love has become something one has. So they've lost that. So instead of loving each other, they start following society's outline for being financially secure, get a house, have kids, and so on. Fromm writes, in some cases, the marriage initiated on the basis of love becomes transformed into a friendly ownership or a cooperation in which two egotisms are pooled into one, that of a family. When I read this, I couldn't help but think of one of my favorite movies, and in which the main character is kind of feeling a little lost and says that at one point you realize that the house that you grew up in isn't like your home anymore, that you have a place that you put all your stuff in, all this stuff, but the idea of home is gone. And then he goes on to say that maybe it's some form of rite of passage, like you won't feel at home again until you create that new idea for yourself. Finally, he concludes that maybe all a family really is a group of people that miss the same imaginary place. That it's like a cycle to make this home for your kids and your partner so that they can feel what you're missing. since divorce is now so easy in our culture, people start to get bored of one partner, and it's easy for them to move on to another one, and they think that's the solution a lot of times. Um, Fromm writes that love is becoming more formed around social convenience, custom, mutual economic interest, shared interest in children, mutual dependency, or mutual hate or fear, rather than um, like that being form of love. Eventually, people realize that they don't actually love each other, and they never really did. A possible solution to avoid loving in the having mode is to try to break away from our society's value of survival and success being getting married, having kids, and so on. Instead of being careless and trying to own or have someone, trying to get to know them and who they actually are and what they like, and truly trying to understand the type of person they are and where they're coming from. Um, I feel like the quality of your life and your experience with that person will improve. And I think that goes for what I was saying earlier about truly identifying with yourself and finding out who you are and what makes you you, and really understanding where your points of view come from.